Going solar does not have to be crazy expensive if you're building an off-grid system or if you're installing batteries in a location where they don't have to be UL listed. You can get a budget brand battery like this Wattcycle right here for about half the price of an EG4 LL server rack battery. But do they perform good enough to justify the purchase, or are you better off, and quite frankly safer, spending the big bucks? So welcome back to the lab where our opinions cannot be bought. We have tried many times before to find a decent budget server rack battery that we would actually recommend to you guys. And we've come close a couple times before, but we haven't found something that we really like and actually feel comfortable recommending to you guys. So the hunt continues, and that's how we ended up with this Wattcycle here at the lab today. As always, we will leave links to this and any coupons that we can get out of Wattcycle in the description down below. But before we jump into our experience testing and playing with this Wattcycle server rack battery, everything we loved and all the things that we really didn't, we're gonna hit you with a super quick spec teardown to get you up to speed on this Wattcycle server rack battery. First up, this thing barely passes the Tiny Baby lift test. It weighs about 99 pounds, which is exactly how much Tiny Baby weighs. It's a 48-volt battery at 100 amp hours, which means it's 5,120 watt hours of storage inside of this thing. It has a continuous output of 100 amps, and you can parallel up to 20 of these guys to have a max system of over 100 kilowatt hours of total storage. This battery has a max output and input of 100 amps, which basically means you could charge this thing from 0 to full in about an hour and discharge it just as fast. In terms of connections and stuff on this guy, you have your 2 negative terminals on this side here, 2 positive terminals right here. You have your breaker, of course, on the front, and your screen/BMS switch right there. And of course, you have your stack of communication ports on the side right here. Otherwise, there is no other ports or anything on this battery. It's very simple. All the dip switches and protocol, all the identification is built into it. Touchscreen is actually really nice. The colors are good. It responds very quickly. We genuinely actually really enjoy using this touchscreen. The BMS has all your standard safety of over discharge, overcharge, cold weather ratings, all that kind of stuff is built into this BMS, everything that you would expect. And the app for this unit actually works pretty good as well. It's really responsive, and you can actually turn on and off the discharge from the app, which is cool. Not a lot of batteries give you that ability. It's kind of like a power station app, doesn't actually turn the BMS on or off. The BMS on the physical battery will stay on, but you can control whether it's outputting right from your phone. So if you have a really simple, dumb inverter hooked up to this thing, and you can't control the inverter, you can control what's going on through the battery, which is actually pretty cool. And right now, at the time of filming, this battery with the discount code that we got from Wattcycle is $665, which is literally half the price of the name brand competition. First thing that we like about this battery was the testing results. It actually performed really well in all but one of our tests, which is exactly what we want to see, and honestly not something we expected from a dirt cheap battery like this. The efficiency was 100%, which all batteries should be. If they're not, you have a problem. Charge test accepted up to 100 amps with no problems. In terms of outputting, this thing could actually surge over 200 amps. We were able to surge it over 11,000 watts to start the compressor while we were already running really big loads from the battery, which is honestly quite impressive. Double the rated output just to get something started is pretty good. A lot of other batteries limit you way back down to like 120 amps or something like that. So that actually could be a bad thing, but we're seeing it as a pretty good thing. And when it came to cold weather testing, we put this guy in the freezer for 24 hours, brought it down to -25 degrees Celsius. It did not accept a charge, which is what it's rated to do, but it did put out a little bit of discharge. When we turned on the breaker, it was still putting out about 46 volts. It should have cut it off completely. Most batteries, when they're underneath that threshold, they should just kill all voltage. So it wasn't the full rated 51.2 volts, but it was still putting out voltage. So that was the only thing that it kind of didn't do perfectly. We also like that this battery has no dip switches or protocol settings or anything on the front, which is kind of the way batteries seem to be going. We were a little nervous setting it up, and it was a little bit of a weird process with the battery seeming to do a little bit of work to figure out what was going on. But it does seem to self-identify and set up its own ID and all that stuff if you're trying to put them in parallel. So that is a pretty cool feature that this battery does have. It is lacking a couple protocols, like it doesn't have a Lux protocol, even though their website says it does. Ours don't have that, so it didn't work perfectly with our EG4 inverters, but it still self-identifies, which makes setting them up way easier if you're running multiple. We also like that they do have bolt-on handles. That's something that every battery that ships without handles built into it should have. EcoWorthy's never came with them. They claim we threw them out with the trash. We double checked. We never got them, but that doesn't matter. These handles did bolt directly on the side. And the cool thing is if you don't want them on there, you can just take them off if you're building your own kind of enclosure or whatever it is. So those are nice. And like we said earlier, the screen is great. It provides tons of information. It works really well for us. You don't have to go into the app to read things off the battery. You can just go right to the screen. We like that. WattCycle also has something that we thought looks pretty cool. We asked them about it and they said it is on the way, like it's almost released. They have these like feet that you can basically bolt to the battery that are just spacers that go between them. So instead of having to get like a server rack cabinet, if you wanted a more budget option, you could just bolt like basically little spacers on all four corners, put the next battery on top of it and basically like build it into a server rack stack, which is secure and safe. It's not going to topple over. You're not just stacking them directly on top of each other. Significantly cheaper than a server rack will be, as long as they actually work when we get them. And honestly, as long as it performs well, that's all that really matters with a battery like this, but it does look pretty good. We've had some batteries in here that just looked like complete trash, and this one honestly looks pretty good. Aesthetically, it is pleasing. If you were to spend your money on it, it's like, hey, at least you got something nice for your money. Now, the most important thing that we don't like about this battery right here is that they're kind of misleading people in the fact that their website says that it has UL certifications. What they mean is the battery cells are UL certified. So this is not a code compliant battery. It doesn't have all of the proper necessities to be UL listed. If you are in a place where you're trying to legally install this, it will not work. But the battery cells have their own UL listing and they're advertising that. So don't be fooled by this. This battery cannot be legally installed in a place that requires certification. That's a common theme when you get budget batteries. People tend to mislabel things or try to feed you false information. We don't love that. The next thing we don't like is that these positive and negative terminals are flipped compared to like standard batteries. The only other battery we have that has the terminals this direction is the EcoWorthy, which is also a very cheap battery. But the problem would be if you had other batteries and you had them in a cabinet, then you bought this one because it's cheap and you wanted to expand your system, the cables are going to cross. And so if you're running it into the bus bars that run up and down the side of a server rack cabinet, you're going to end up with cables going across. It's going to be ugly or annoying or whatever. I don't know why they had to switch it just to be different. Another thing we don't love about WattCycle as a company is their website doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies. It feels pretty fake. Like all their stuff on there is AI generated. You can tell it's not real. And while we do have a real product here, and that's why we get things like this to test them to show you if they are actually real and good or just bad, I think a lot of these companies that are trying to do something need to start stepping up their website game and actually use real photos and just try to gain trust through that. Stop putting AI generated stuff. It just looks fake and confusing and no one trusts it. That's not my favorite thing. And their website also just doesn't have key information. It doesn't have like a spec sheet. It doesn't have the manual. Doesn't have any of that stuff, which becomes a problem if you were trying to run this with a different brand inverter and you try to call the inverter company to say, hey, I can't get this to read or it's not working properly. The inverter company cannot reference a manual to try to help you. They just say, dude, I don't know what to do. I can't access these documents. We also find it interesting that WattCycle supplies you with these very short cables for paralleling your batteries. The thing with that is that when you bend these, they actually become very, very short. And so if you have one in a battery like this, it barely reaches the battery above it if they're sitting flat on each other. If you were to put these in a cabinet or you were to put these in their little feet that they're selling or anything, these cables won't work, which is frustrating because that just becomes another thing that you have to buy. It's just another weird little thing and you got to make sure you get the pinout right and all that kind of stuff if you're trying to put these in a cabinet or buy their little feet. So don't love that. And the last point about WattCycle is that you are getting a budget brand, and with that, you don't get the best support. When you call them, if you get someone at all, it's not super helpful. They have an email right here on the battery, which they can get back to you for, but they just don't have like the experience with the products that you wish they would have. But that's kind of the trade-off. Like you get a half-price battery and you don't get the support. So if you're looking for support, I would steer away from something like this. If you're just, you know what you're doing, you're just trying to set up a quick, easy system, this could work. So who is this battery for? honestly, we think it's a pretty good battery for what it is. It's for anyone that is looking to do a cost-effective system that doesn't care about the UL listings. If you're putting this in a cabin, whatever situation you got yourself into where you don't care about the UL listing and you just want a cheap battery, we did have a good experience with this. We do actually like this battery for what it is. So this battery could be for you if you're that guy. If you're looking for support or you're looking for a legal installation or any of those kind of things, you're gonna just have to fork out the big bucks. With that, you get a way better experience, so it's not like a total waste of your money. But if you're looking for bang for your buck, you can basically get 2 of these for the price of 1 EG4. But anyways, that is all we got for you guys today. I think the Wattcycle is probably the first budget battery that we actually do recommend to you. So make sure you guys check it out. We have links in the description down below. Otherwise, we will catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out and stay charged.